Hello again, and welcome to another tutorial. Well, a kind of tutorial, because this Canon P has a really stuck and still have a very stuck worn out shutter button mechanism. So the only thing I will show here is how to actually assemble it again. So yeah. There were some broken parts, worn out parts, bended parts, which I cannot restore. The problem with this camera, you cannot push the shutter button any further, and of course you cannot wind the camera again. And the actually thing that is really wrong, that is in here. Hope you can see it. This part in here is completely damaged by maybe push down or try to push down very hard on the push button, the shutter button, and simply bent the parts down here simply out of place, and one of the screws has really damaged the thread. So it's not really possible for me to actually repair, but we can take a look around in the camera, see how it looks inside. So down here is, I think it must be the slow gear. The repair manual for this camera really doesn't tell that much about in details what actually is parts. This is the self timer here. So this down here must be the slow gear escapement, and this is the rangefinder, how it works when trying to focus. It's very simple. Very few things, parts that actually moves. It's the there is nothing over here except for the back here with the what do you say, the frame lines that actually move when putting on a lens with a whatever length, 35, 50, and I guess it must be something 90 or 135 or so. I'm not so familiar with this Canon P camera, but about the lenses. But this is how it works inside. So and here's the drum, and yeah, there's really not much to do about it. The very thin shutter curtain, which is made of metal, very thin, and the advance mechanism, which is really locked up at the moment. So I can actually show something about that. But well, the counter, which is here, you can try to actually count something. It's not really possible. Things going in a different way in this camera. In many cameras it goes that way, but here's the arrow telling me that the film going over here, and it turns that way around. So maybe we can set it to count something. No. It will not really work. So I will just assemble it again, put the cover on, the bottom and the top plate. So I thought when looking in the repair manual that if, it shows something like that. So, but it didn't show that you have to take off the, open the film door and simply put in the rest of the camera just here. Simply put it on here and then close the door. So now it is very simple, but so we need to go, I mean, not to go out of in the camera, we go out of it. Yeah, where we need some tools, a 1.2mm flathead screwdriver. I use a 2mm flathead screwdriver. Nothing special. The other one was the ther, which I like, and a few dentist tool we also will need, and of course a good handy tweezer. And of course we also need those rubber cones to assemble part of the camera. And it's good, it's from Japan Hobby Tool. Really handy to have. Now we have 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 screws here on the front, and there are 2 more on the lens mount. Before we put on the lens mount. So what we do is, and there are different lengths of screw, but I put on 1 screw here before the mount actually come on. So, and it's all flathead screwdrivers we need. Yes, years before it was any crosshead screwdrivers that was used for that. So there are 2 black screws here, 180 degree apart from each other. So take good care of that, because there are 4 threads, one there, there, and there, and the last one. And it's for the mount. So there's only the 2 that hold part of the casing. So I can also just put on the last 4 screws here on the actual front cover. So, and then screw them in. And then next I will take the mount and this very thin adjustment spacers. It was a kind of a micro adjustment they do when they in the past. Of course they also adjust the rangefinder from outside. So now there are some adjustment possible here. One of these is there is a screw on the front which has a funny shape, different shape, and it sits around here. Then you could use a 1.2mm and put in and adjust the rangefinder, part of the rangefinder. I'm not quite sure what, and the other part is actually the what does on the front here. There's also a lens, kind of a lens, to make the adjustment when the top cover is on. So let's continue with the very thin spacers which is really thin. Those are really thin. And before I took it apart, I just set a mark up here towards the top cover, just to make sure where things should sit. And in this camera there was a very thin part here, which I also set a mark, so I actually know where it should sit. And of course we're not done yet. There's the last thin, which I also set a mark here, just to remember where it should sit. So, and last, the mount itself. It has a mark here from the factory, not something I set, but it's from the factory, and it sets towards the self-timer lever. Just to mention that before you take it apart, that if your lens, when you mount it, is sitting wrong, well, it could be the issue, and then you have to actually take off the mount again and maybe turn it. But this mark is, I think it must be to show that it has to sit like that. Some of the spacers here are really thin, so one have to take good care of and not bend them too much. They can easily be bended, so you cannot put them correct in again. So there are two lengths of screws on the front here. The long screws, it will say those here sits on top, I mean towards the top of the camera, and the shorter one is sit in the lower part of the lens mount. So now we are safe. So I can show you how the difference in the two lengths of screws. This is the long screw, and this is the short screw. So you hopefully can see what is the difference. Now, so we set, oh, whoa, take good care of the screws and the shutter curtain. Not curtain, but made of steel. To titanium, I think it is. Then screw it in, and then we have the two short screws, which sits here in the lower part of the mount. And the last on the mount. Tighten it good, not too much. So, and then I could actually just put the bottom cover on. So we are done with that, and it sits like this. The hole here for the this ring retaining nut has to sit where the winder arm actually going through. I mean the winder mechanism. So just put it on, and there are two tiny screws in the other end. which will show. Oh, we just have to see something. Now we have the bottom cover on, off, just to have a look inside here. So the parts in here, it's for the tension, where you adjust the tension of the shutter curtains. Use a good screwdriver here when adjust those, and don't set the tension too hard. You will probably maybe damage something. Now this part here is actually the shutter pin that goes all the way from here, via a connection here, all the way down here, down to here, and it's completely stuck, so no parts will really move anywhere. It's a shame, really a shame. So, and I guess this is for the flash shoe, accessory contact here. Yes, it must be so. The white wire here goes from, oh, maybe this is the part of the flash, I don't know. But there's an white wire up here that ends here to the middle, the middle contact of the accessory socket. So yeah, shame on. Just put it on here, put the retaining nut over here and screw it in. Then use a lens spinner, kind of, and just tighten it gently. So, and then we have two screws here on the other end. This is also flathead screwdrivers, so, and can be a little tricky sometimes to put on. And where did it went? Here. They're really shiny, polished screws. Oh, sorry, I'm out of the camera. So, and then the locking pin here for the film door. Now the next thing is that we need to put the self timer lever and the bearing here. Try to get a little higher here, so have a better view of what's happened. So there, and then this part here, which can only sit in one way, and there is a kind of a notch here on the back side, and it should come over the notch, the pin here. So we just put it on and see what's happened. Try to actually set it correct. So there it is, and there are two black screws and one shiny screw. Oh. So the two black screws has to sit towards the top. So there, one, and the different shape screw has to sit towards the bottom of the camera. Oh gosh. Sorry, it's a little difficult to actually get that screw on. So don't tighten it yet, because it's not a countersunk screw. So it's better to have the two countersunk screws put in first and then tighten those, because then they are in that way aligned and cannot move. So, and the bottom screw, so, and then the self-timer lever is putting on here. I cannot move here any further, so something like that. It will not do any difference because things are worn out in the camera. Now the nut, I mean the screw for the self-timer have to be put on, and you screw it in clockwise, just like an ordinary screw. And then you could use a rubber tool to just tighten the screw here. This is really good. And because it will not set any mark or scratch or whatever. You can of course use a lens spinner to tighten the screw. It's also good. And we can just do it here. So don't tighten it too much, it's small. Now then we come to the top cover, which was really not easy to take off. And this is because, I mean, the repair manual tells that there is one retaining ring here on the front of the house, the top cover, and then the next one is the lens, which I actually set a mark here so I can find the correct position again. And then there should be one part here that should be taken out, but I mean maybe it's a different for the different models, I don't know, but I couldn't simply unscrew it. I actually, just in case, I actually set a mark up here just to know where this ring, nut, retaining screw or whatever it calls, if I could take it out, but I couldn't. So when I took off the top cover, I simply put in a very thin dentist tool here and simply bend out the part here. No one can see I've ever taken it off that way, but it works. So I think I have to do the same when I put the top cover on again. Well, it's actually easier as I see it. So one, put it on here and then press towards the back, and then it should be possible to put on the top cover here. Or one could actually just lift up with a dentist tool or screwdriver and lift it up over this whatever ring, and just to be sure everything is in the camera, which should be there. Yeah, nothing else. So I can simply push the top cover on, and then there it is. So now I can begin with the flash. Here, the flash here. It has a notch here, so it can only sit in one position, and there is a pin in here. So one, put this on here, and then it stays there, and then the flash contact, I don't know what it calls, but a kind of a contact assembly. Just put it in and simply screw it in. And then I have to use my my lens spinner here to actually put this screw in. So, and it sits there. On the other side, there's only one screw that needs to be put in. And where did it go? Somewhere. Should be here somewhere. I've seen it. Now, it's up here. Whoa. There. Put it on here. It's the only, I mean, there are actually two screws that holds the top cover, I mean real screws that holds the top cover in place. So, and then there is one on the front, which is the screw that covers and also in the same time hold the top cover in place, but it's also the hole for the rangefinder adjustment. So we can just put this in. And can be a little tricky. So now the accessory shoe can be put in. It's not really something special. There's a spring on it, and it has to sit correct. So we put it in here like this. It's with the angled end, the cut off end towards the back. And then we can just put in the 4 screws. So there. I mean, not all of them yet, but I know I cover the camera now from the lens. Sorry for that. I will just screw them in. And then the last one. So, and there, and number 3, and the last one. So, and then there is a window. I mean, a kind of a window. It's just a piece of glass in a frame that sits here on the back. One need to put it on in a way like, just show it. You cannot just put it on, put it in here. One to have to put it on and then slide it to the left. So the hidden screw here is actually visible. And then add a screw. So, there. Now the top parts here have to come on, and we will begin with the exposure wheel. And before I took it apart, I set the exposure to 1/250 in a second. So it's because, and I also set a mark here where the 250 a second. So I know where this exposure wheel has to sit, because then it's easy to actually access all 3 screws that hold that wheel in place. So it's something like that. And then, oh, I shouldn't have put on the flash shoe, but no matter. I can access it anyway. But when you take it apart, it's just easier to have full access to all the screws without turning the exposure wheel. And there are 3 of them. So that's on. Shame it doesn't work. Now the lock screw for the shutter button comes on, and it has to stay on A, towards A when you take it apart, because then you again will have full access to all 3 screws. This is also tiny. And maybe a 1.2 millimeters screwdriver is a bit too big, but it works okay. So, and then the last screw comes in. So now we're almost there. Then the winder and the rewinder will come on. This special shape spacer have to come on here. And before you take it apart, just in case you want to go any further into the camera, set a mark here where there's notch, kind of a notch is, so you know when you actually when you put it back in, set it correct, just in case of anything. Now this pin here is actually going into the notch here, so it will sit like that. And of course it's not possible to advance this camera, but I guess your camera maybe is better. Now then there is a thin wave spacer. It's not a straight spacer, it's a waved. Has to come on first. And then this this spacer here. Or was it the opposite? No. I would guess so. No, there was some. So on here, this spacer comes on here, and then the retaining nut, and just put it in. It's nothing special. It's just to screw in clockwise. And then you could just use your rubber tool if you have one. And if you want to tighten it even much more, you could use a lens spinner. Just tighten it gently. Now the rewinder will come in, and it's actually easy to screw that in. There is one set screw here on the side of the bottom part of the rewinder, and when you take it apart, this one has to be unscrewed. No, loosen. Only loosen it. It's a really tiny screw, so there's no idea of unscrew it fully. So when putting it in, there's a kind of a spring down here, a locking spring. So you just put it in, and hopefully, not really, one can use a dentist tool or a screwdriver. Oh, come on, autofocus. Screw it in, push it in here, and then push the little spring down here towards the flash contact, and at the same time push down here. So hopefully we managed to do that. Yeah. And then we are finally there, because then I can lift this up without any problem, and it will stay there. Now to put this in, just set it on and then turn the rewinder handle, or the other part here. Then use the end of a tweezer to put in here, and at the same time gently push on the rewinder itself, not too much, because then we will expose the very tiny screw, set screw here, and simply lock the rewinder so it's there. So now it's correct in place. One can actually set it there, push it in. Has to be there when you rewind it. And when it's ready, we can just push it in. And then we are done. Not yet, because we missed the part of the front rangefinder system. This is a lens, or not really a lens, it's just a lens. But it actually not, it's not, I don't know what it is. It's, when you look through it, you will see it's not fully clear. One part of the lens is actually out of alignment compared to the front. So the other part is this one, just like this, as I see it. So therefore one can adjust this front in and actually move the picture, and then you will see it in the rangefinder. Now maybe it's a bad explanation, but I haven't found so much info about this, the Canon P. So now I can put this in here, and it sits really in a tight fit. So there. And since I have set the mark here, I can just push it in. Maybe I need to turn it a little. It has really a tight fit. So, little fellow. Do you mind being here? So, there. And then you can just press it in, all the way in. And since I already have set a mark, I know where this should sit when it's correct. And then I can just clean away the little mark I set here with a small cotton bud, so it looks fine again, and then I can deliver it back to my friend. Just a tiny drop of lighter fluid. Then wipe away this here. And no one can see there has been a mark at all. Just a little more. And then it's absolutely clear. Then I can put the retaining ring, protection ring on here, and use my rubber tool to screw it in. And then we are done. Sad to say it's not a non-working camera, but maybe you can use the information about how to actually take the camera apart. I mean, take the top cover, the front cover, the mount, the bottom cover, and part of the things inside. So that's all for me. So hope you can use the information. So that's all for me. Bye bye.